What is going on, everyone? Coming at you with another 2022 NFL draft video. Just T-minus 2 days until the NFL draft. So excited for what's going to be an awesome weekend here. And today, we're going to be talking about not my guys in this draft class. And let's just call it what it is. These are the players that I do believe are being overrated in this draft class. It's not that I won't be cheering for them. It's not that I have anything against these guys. Hell, some of these players are going to turn into really good players and make me look stupid for these takes. But the point is here, these are players that I evaluated, and I've seen the way other people talk about him, where they're ranked in those sort of consensus projections of where they're supposed to go. And based on what I've seen from these players, I probably would not be drafting them. So it is what it is. I think there are overrated players in every draft class. There are busts. There are players that get taken too early. And this is my best attempt at trying to identify who some of those players might be and who, if I were drafting, I'd probably be staying away from in this draft class. And let's get started. Please do hit that like button if you enjoy. Also, make sure you come back here Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday during the draft. If you enjoy my draft content, we'll be here live for the entire draft, giving my live reactions and analysis. Going to be a ton of fun. Going to make it worth your while, and we'll see you there. But let's get started with the quarterback position. And the first quarterback I'm going to talk about here is Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh. And it's funny, he's actually, just based on the grades and how I fill out evaluations, he's actually my number one quarterback, because I do think how good he is now pushes him up a little bit, but I'm not actually drafting him ahead of, Willis or Howell or Matt Corral, because the upside just isn't there with Kenny Pickett. And that's why he makes this list. He's someone that's in the conversation for the Panthers at 6. I wouldn't be stunned if there's some other teams that draft him. We've looked at maybe like the Lions potentially taking him at the end of the first or the early second. And in a league where Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield can be had for peanuts, I mean, heck, you might be able to convince the Browns to give you a pick to take Baker Mayfield's contract right now. I think that's about the type of player that, Kenny Pickett might be. I hate his pocket presence, for one. Like, as a redshirt senior, he's panicking in a clean pocket against UMass. Like, that's only going to get inflated at the next level. And until that gets better, which I don't think it will at his age, he's Taylor Heinicke. Like, I don't think he has a rocket arm. I don't think his processing is so elite that he can transcend all this stuff. So, like I said, I think maybe he can be Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe he can be what Baker Mayfield is. Why the hell would you draft that in the first round? Not only because that level player is currently available in the modern framework of the league, but you are committing to an opportunity cost when you draft a player that high. Look no further than Daniel Jones on the New York Giants. They spent the 6th overall pick, right where the Panthers are picking this year, on Daniel Jones, who pretty much everyone said he could be a decent player, but he's never going to be a great quarterback. And several years later, that very team was sitting there like, well, we spent a first round pick on him. We got to wait it out and see if he works out throughout his rookie contract. And they traded down with Justin Fields on the board. Now, we'll see what Fields' career becomes, but that's just the type of thinking that you are really taking on when you spend a top pick on Kenny Pickett. So for me, as a late second round pick, sure, I think you can start to think about him. But as I do these mock drafts, I cannot possibly imagine spending a high draft pick on Kenny Pickett. On top of that, I don't think there's a huge gap between him and Desmond Ridder either, if you want that sort of day one starter with a low ceiling. And then the second quarterback on my list that I want to talk about is Malik Willis, which is like a completely different conversation than Kenny Pickett. For me, the upside's absolutely there with Malik Willis. And I did a full film breakdown on him back in January. So if you want to go back and really see more of what I think about Malik Willis, definitely go watch that video. I'll link it down below. But yeah, I mean, you can't deny the upside, right? The theoretical upside. He's fast. He's got a really strong arm and all this stuff. But God, there is so much to work on with him reading defenses, pocket presence, decision making. Just the fact that when he's scrambling, more often than not, he's scrambling to run, not to pass. He's not surveying the field as he extends plays. There's just a laundry list of stuff you got to work on with him. And he's not Fields from last year. He's not Trey Lance from the year before. He's not Josh Allen from years ago. He's not the level of prospect of those guys to spend the same draft capital on him. I mean, I was just getting started with Mahomes, but I would argue he's not what Mahomes was coming out either. So, man, there's a world where I become a meme here, right? Malik Willis is the next raw quarterback with tools that goes to the right spot and turns into a superstar. I'm acknowledging that. And I think there is a certain point where you can justify that. But if you're like the Panthers at 6 or the Falcons at 8 and your just offensive situation's a disaster, you can't put Malik Willis in there. He needs time to sit and breathe and learn in a good organization with weapons and a good coach that can, both coach up his deficiencies that I mentioned and also build around them, structure an offense that he's not going to get exposed with some of the stuff that he does poorly. So there's just so many things that have to be right for Malik Willis. I do think Pittsburgh in the middle of the first round, the Saints could probably pull it off. There's teams with the right pick, Malik Willis can definitely work out. But God, there are some teams that are going to be thinking about him, and we'll see where he ends up. He has so much bust potential. It's crazy, especially if you're talking about him that early. I think he's a second-round prospect, just like all of these quarterbacks. And frankly, as I mentioned in my Guys video, the gamble proposition on him versus Matt Corral and Sam Howell, I don't think you're buying that different of a ticket there. I think all those guys have athletic upside. They all have arm talent, and they all have issues with their game that you need to improve. I don't understand why Malik Willis is getting all of the conversation when I think it's, pretty much a matter of preference between those three as far as who's your draft and develop quarterback. So Malik Willis does make my Not My Guys list with full admittance that this could be Justin Herbert all over again and he blows up. I just don't think it's going to happen. We'll see. Then at running back's tough. With running back, if you're a 4th or 5th round prospect or better, you're a talented player, right? You got all the tools to be a starting running back at the next level for the most part if you're getting drafted with any sort of relevant pick at all. It's just a matter of getting the right blocking, the right scheme, the right usage, staying healthy, all that stuff. So it's tough to pick not my guys at running back. I really just generally like these backs. There is one player that I'm definitely lower on, and that's Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M. Now, as of lately, I've seen a lot of people kind of get to where I'm at basically with Spiller, where I think he's a good player, but I don't see a 3-down starter there. I don't think he has the athletic tools to stand out above 32 other running backs in the league. He's got good vision. I love his hands out of the backfield. He's got the size, but he just doesn't have a lot of juice. He's not overly elusive in the open field. I think he does struggle to change directions unless he's going to that nasty jump cut that he does have, and it's effective. But for me, Spiller kind of gets just kind of flushed into this group of 4th, 5th round running backs. He did make my top 10 list, but there's talk about him as the 3rd best back in this class, as a 2nd, 3rd round pick. He's a day 4 guy for me. And again, he could turn into a starter just like the cluster of guys that he's there with, but he's definitely someone I'm lower on in this draft. Then at wide receiver, Drake London out of USC is going to be a not my guy. Another player I did a lengthy video breakdown on, I encourage you to go check out, but look, Drake London, the second he gets drafted, will be one of the 5 slowest starting wide receivers in the entire NFL. He has legitimate 4.6 speed, and he didn't run at his pro day for a reason. He was going to run in the 4.6s, maybe in the 4.7s. Everyone was going to freak out, and he would crush his draft stock. So he was smart not to do that. But the reality is, when he gets to the next level, it cannot be as simple as, okay, this guy's 6'4", he wins jump balls, let's put him on the outside, he's going to run 9 routes, and we're just going to throw the ball up to him. You can't just do that. That's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that's N'Keal Harry, that's Hakeem Butler. It's all those guys all over again. You have got to be much more mindful when you draft Drake London. And Now, London has something those guys did not. He's an excellent route runner. The problem is he's just not going to stack guys on the outside as a vertical threat. So if you're going to play Drake London as an outside receiver, he needs to be used on hitch routes and comebackers so that defensive backs have to respect the potential of him to turn around and work back to the quarterback, something that he's also excellent at. So where he goes is going to be critical for if Drake London works out. I think he's much more of a boom or bust prospect than people realize. He needs to go somewhere where they are acknowledging that we can't just run 9 routes with him and expect him to outmuscle NFL DBs that can actually turn around and find the football, unlike the guys in the Pac-12 that he was facing. But he also needs to go to a quarterback that can hit those throws. Those are big-time NFL throws. Back shoulders on the sideline. It takes timing, accuracy, arm talent, and the time to put in with a wide receiver. Those are special connections. That's Rodgers to Devontae Adams, Burrow to Jamar Chase, things that take time and years to develop. We see it as well with Mike Williams and Justin Herbert. Mike Williams is not a poor comparison for Drake London, though Mike Williams is faster. So if you're going to put him on the outside, it's going to take everything I just described. Or you can have the foresight to say, well, this guy would actually be a really good big slot guy, similar to like Michael Thomas. He's got good foot speed. You can put the ball in his hands on bubble screens and he can fight for tough yardage. He likes to block. He can be a blocking guy for the other player you're throwing the ball to. He will outmuscle slot corners. He works better underneath when he's not seeing press coverage, which he would see a lot more of on the outside. So I see a world where Drake London can be Michael Thomas. If he goes to the New Orleans Saints with, Drew Brees and Sean Payton knowing exactly how to use him. It's not going to happen. They can't have Thomas and Drake London, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs would be a situation that could understand how to appropriately use him. The other thing is these 15 Shanahan-style offenses, I don't think he can play really well in those systems, because those offenses that are play action, taking deep shots, you want receivers that can go burr past NFL defensive backs on crossing routes and posts and flag routes. Drake London's not going to be doing that at a high level at the next level. So he is a very tight needle, a tight window to thread a needle through as far as where he needs to go. And it's just not very likely that he goes to the spot that's going to properly use him. So that's, to me, Drake London is a lot of, talent in certain ways that just needs to be, fine-tuned and pushed into the right slot, maybe quite literally into slot receiver. But I definitely see a lot of bust outcomes as well with Drake London. Then I have Khalil Shakir actually on this list, and I like what he does with the ball in his hands. He's kind of a gimmick guy in a lot of ways. You can go jet sweeps like a really poor man's Deebo Samuel. Everyone's trying to find Deebo this year. It's just, you're not just going to replicate Deebo Samuel with most players. He's got good release. He's a good route runner. I think he can be an effective slot receiver, but I've seen second round discussions, early third on him. For me, he's more of a fourth round guy. Someone that you can put the ball in his hands, use him as a slot receiver, but comparing him to, say, Kyle Phillips as a slot receiver, give me Kyle Phillips, who's shown to be a better separator down the field. I think Khalil Shakir in the right fit can be a useful player, but I just personally think he's being a little bit overdrafted in your kind of consensus situations. And I don't necessarily hate him, but he was dropped down a little bit further for me for my wide receiver rankings. Where do I have Khalil Shakir? He's wide receiver 17 as a fourth round pick. Like another guy, Velus Jones, by the way, is a more athletic gimmick type of guy. I'd rather take a gamble on Velus Jones than Khalil Shakir, for example. And maybe I'm totally wrong about that, but that's just how the evals came in. And then David Bell out of Purdue. I mean, I don't get how you even spend a day 2 pick on him. He's so slow. Like he's every bit of JJ Arcega-Whiteside all over again. Like I don't get what he's going to do at an above average level at the next level. Like, yeah, he's got good foot speed, he's got good technique in his routes, but when you have 4.7 speed, it doesn't matter how good your routes are. NFL DBs are going to tighten the gap like that, and it's not like he's Drake London where he's 6'4" and 220 pounds. No, like he's even slower than Drake London, and he's 6'1". So he's not going to be this awesome contested catch guy at the next level. To me, he's a 5th to a 6th round player because you appreciate that he has an attention to detail and he produced in college, but he's my 23rd wide receiver in this draft class. I do not understand him in the 3rd, 4th round when there's real players at the position. I mean, you're hoping he can be Anquan Boldin, but how many times are we going to sit here and hope for another Anquan Boldin from a receiver that runs 4.7? The game's changed. Like, it's just, there's not a place for David Bell in the modern NFL, in my opinion. Then at tight end, Greg Dulcich, I was surprised I had to put on this list just because I've now seen, frankly, a lot of analysts have him as tight end 1. And I'm not there with him at all. He's, I think, tight end, where do I have him at right now? Tight end 6, tight end 7? He's at, tight end 7. I've got a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. I think he can play, and I think he can separate, and he's fast, and if developed appropriately, can be a good starter in the NFL. But I also think very highly of a lot of tight ends in this class, and I don't think he separates himself from this group the way a lot of people are discussing. I think he's really a soft player. He's just very skinny. He doesn't look like a full-size tight end, so if you're talking about his blocking abilities, it's just not there. And it shows up in his hands. Like, he doesn't have the just consistent ball-winning ability of some of these other tight ends. And I think his speed is good, but, we're not talking about Noah Fant or even Evan Ingram here. No, I think we're more talking about, like, Robert Tonyan. Like, he's a lanky half tight end, half receiver with good speed, but not great speed. So, yeah, there's a place for him. 3rd, 4th round. I think he could very well make me look foolish for saying I wouldn't draft that guy if he goes to the right spot and develops. But for me, like, Jake Ferguson's a more complete tight end. I think in certain situations, if you need a number 2 tight end that's fast, give me Chigo Okonkwo and more of those Shanahan-style offenses. We talked in my Guys video about Charlie Kolar, who I think is just a much better, well-rounded tight end. I think having him over Trey McBride is, man, with all due respect to the people that have that, I don't get it. Like, McBride's faster. He's better with the ball in his hands. He's got much better hands, and he's bigger. He's a much better blocker. That to me really doesn't make sense. So, and I've seen that from multiple people. So he's not my guy because I don't think he's this, top 3 tight end in this class and some future superstar at tight end. I think he's Robert Tonyan. So Greg Dulcich. And then on the offensive line, I got a couple names here. Tyler Smith makes the list out of Tulsa. He's like the Malik Willis of tackle prospects. Like, you see the tools, you see him pancake dudes, but he's holding constantly. His footwork's a mess. He's bad with his hands. 1st round for that player. Man, that is a bet on your offensive line coach, to say the least. Like, you really got to coach this guy up now. He's super young. He's super athletic. But if I'm drafting an offensive lineman in the 1st round, I want him to be on the field immediately and for me to feel pretty good about that. And if Tyler Smith is out there, especially as a tackle, I'm terrified for my quarterback. Like, I think he'd be immediately one of the worst pass protecting tackles in the NFL on day 1. If your plan is like to play him at guard and then in a couple years you kick him back out to tackle because you have an older tackle, maybe back into the 1st round, I can understand. Like, I've seen Dallas a lot. Like, he plays left guard, Tyron Smith a couple more years. Like, I guess that is kind of the dream for him to go and develop. But, like, let's say, I don't know, the Chargers or even the Saints, like someone that needs a tackle immediately. If you're drafting him to play tackle, good luck. That's all I'm going to say. Then Rasheed Walker down the board out of Penn State. I mean, he's Tyler Smith in his technique, but not an athlete. So it gets even worse. He's declaring early as a junior, probably a top-rated recruit coming out. But God, his tape was a tough watch, man. He's just doesn't really know what he's doing out there. He's clunky as an athlete. And yeah, he's what do we have on Rasheed Walker? I think 5th, 6th round for me for Rasheed Walker. He is tackle number 21 as a 6th to a 7th round grade. He doesn't have he's got just over 33-inch arms, right on the threshold. I don't see the athletic upside for him, and he's genuinely one of the worst pass protectors in this class, day one. So for me, I would not be thinking about him until late in the draft, and that's just because he's young and went to Penn State. But yeah, I don't see a whole lot there with Rasheed Walker. Then Kellen Diesch out of Arizona State, someone that's not a bad player. He's been in the league or been in college football for 5 years, transferred from Texas A&M, went to Arizona State, and did good work as a pass protecting tackle. But he has absurd dimensions, and I actually had in my notes on him before we even got to his arm length measurements or any of that stuff. I just had written in my notes he is completely vulnerable to a bull rush because he's 6'7", if not 6'8", so he's towering. He's got this big open chest, but he has T-Rex arms. He's got 32-inch arms, so he can't play guard. He's just too tall to do it. But he is a constant target for good bull rushers to just get inside his chest, and he's top heavy because he's so tall. So I like his technique. He tested well, but God, I don't think he clears the thresholds to make it in the NFL, because the second he meets Khalil Mack or Rashawn Gary or Myles Garrett, Joey Bosa, the second he meets any of these guys with length and power, it's over. I just don't think he's physically capable of holding up against those guys. And he's a guy being discussed 3rd, 4th round. Do I even have a draftable grade on him? I do as a 6th round guy. I'm not a Kellen Diesch guy. I think he's going to struggle at the next level. I really do. Interior offensive line, I didn't really have anyone for my guys other than Zion Johnson, and I don't really have anyone for my not my guys either. I think I'm pretty in line for the most part with this interior offensive line group. It's a solid class. Go check out my top 10 interior offensive line video from last week if you want to hear a little more about those guys. And then with the interior defensive line, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just say pretty much all of them. I think this is genuinely, let's just say excluding quarterback classes, I think this is genuinely the worst position group I've ever evaluated in a draft since I've been doing this going back to 2016, 2017. It's just not a good year to need interior defensive tackles. And that surprised me because we've got all these super seniors due to the extra year of eligibility from COVID. I thought there was going to be a bunch of 5th, 6th, 7th round guys that were full grown adults that had played the run with discipline and technique that were eager to get in the league. And God, I was so underwhelmed, man. This is a squishy, uninspiring, unathletic group of defensive tackles. So we did have some guys on my guys list: Travis Jones, Neil Farrell. I think, the first round guys, Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis, obviously. Those 4, I think, will be able to play in the NFL. There's another guy in this class that I could see becoming a starter, Perion Winfrey, but he's actually a player I'm betting against. He's really athletic. He's a monster. He's got 36-inch arms. He's got a variety of pass rush moves that can win. And I do think with the right coaching, he can work out, but he is one of the worst run defending defensive tackles you'll ever see. He's light. I don't know how effective his power will be at the next level. He's the 5th guy that you're kind of gambling on in the 2nd, 3rd round. Okay, that's fine. Logan Hall is a hot name right now. Definitely a not my guy. I've got a 3rd round grade on him. I think he's an edge hybrid. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, he can become Emmanuel Ogbah, who's turned into a really good player on the Dolphins, as the right scheme fit in a Belichickian 3-4 hybrid front where he really developed his skills. But he was, keep in mind, he was a 2nd round pick for the Chiefs, did nothing there, the Browns, and then the Chiefs got him for nothing, and then the Dolphins, I think, picked him up for nothing. Like, he took a long time to get to the point where he's at right now. Logan Hall maybe can get there with the right coaching. Demarvin Leal, I saw no growth there. He's not the athlete that we thought he was, mocking him in the first round like a year ago. Similar deal with Logan Hall, though. Like, put him in a hybrid system. Maybe he can play 3-tech. Maybe. Matthew, Butler, Haskell, Garrett. 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys that can maybe be a part of a rotation, but I see almost no starting upside there. You got Otito Ogbannia down the board. Really big, like, looks the part, like a power rushing dude, but a complete one-trick pony. Anyone in the NFL is going to be just able to set their anchor immediately and get ready for that, because he has no balance, he has no quickness, not a disciplined run defender. The right development, maybe you can turn him into a bull rusher, but man, John Ridgeway out of Arkansas, was not impressed by him. I think this is a terrible interior defensive line class, and a lot of these guys are going to get overdrafted because teams are going to be like, well, we got to fill in this spot, and they're going to be left with a bunch of guys that I don't think can see the field right away. So really, the interior defensive line class as a whole is a not my guy. Like, other than some of the names I do like, it's a very thin draft class. Then on the edge, this is a very interesting group. There is a lot of players with a lot of hype on this edge group, and there's going to be some takes here. So buckle up. Travon Walker is a not my guy in this group. And, you know, the upside is there. Physically speaking, if you just put him and Myles Garrett out there and you didn't know who was who for some reason for an off-the-field workout. Now, Myles Garrett's grown up, physically speaking. He probably looks a little bit more jacked and all that stuff. But as far as how they're going to run, how they're going to do in a 3-cone, how high they're going to jump, Travon Walker is that type of dude. So I understand, like, if you're an NFL coach and you have confidence in yourself, you say, okay, Georgia didn't use him really as a real pass rusher. They just had him stand up and contain and defend the run. Totally get that. And you're saying we can turn this guy into Myles Garrett. That's how you get to these conversations about him as the number 1 pick, the number 2 pick. And honestly, I'd love to see what Dan Campbell and that coaching staff could do with him, because I think that's pretty likely that they end up going Travon Walker. I'd love to see what they can do with him. And he is one of these guys like Malik Willis that could just totally make me look foolish and be a top 5 edge rusher in the league in 4 years. But you are drafting a complete project. Like, yes, the physical tools are there, but he has no pass rush skill set at all. He was just not asked to do it. You're basically drafting a high school prospect. Like, that's basically what you're doing here, in my opinion. He's got a high floor as a run defender, absolutely. But for me, I don't see a huge difference between, like, maybe Gregory Rousseau last year, who a lot of people disliked, and Travon Walker this year. Rousseau is an underrated athlete, and I think Walker's a little bit overrated. Both guys look like good athletes for how big they are. But man, this dude had like very little pass rush production. I think only 18 of his pressures last year were actual one-on-one wins. He's a complete project that you are drafting because of a workout and how good of an athlete he is. Those players usually are, Gregory Rousseau last year, back into the first. Daniil Hunter, Josh Sweat, 3rd round picks. Nick Bonito in this class, 2nd round pick. Logan Hall, 2nd round pick or so. Not a top 5 player for that. It just doesn't make sense to me. I get it, like, teams are enamored by his character and he grew up in a military family. He's super disciplined, good kid. Like, I understand all of that. But as a top 5 pick, I think it's a reaction to, like, this not being a very good draft class. Man, I don't really start thinking about him until you're into the teens of the draft. And that's if I'm, the Ravens or the Steelers or the Packers or Niners or someone that has a great track record and coaching staff to develop these guys. Not the Jags. Are you kidding me? If he goes to the Jags at number 1, what are we doing here? So Travon Walker, not my guy. Could look totally foolish in a couple of years. I acknowledge it. I just think the process is really poor to consider him that early, especially over a guy like Kayvon Thibodeaux. Like, seriously, what are we doing here? Kayvon Thibodeaux is a better athlete on the field. He's, got better pass rush moves. He's got better production. It's just because his 40 time was like 8 seconds or like a 0.08 slower. Like, what? It just doesn't make sense to me. And for a similar, line of thinking here, Boye Mafe out of Minnesota is getting way overhyped in my opinion because of his workout grades. Very similar to Travon Walker. I'm from Minnesota. I'm a Gopher fan. I have every reason to be biased and love Boye Mafe. Him in the first round is preposterous to me. Everyone says, oh, he's got all the tools to be a speed to power rusher at the next level. I didn't see it. I did not see the power from Boye Mafe at all. I know he tested well. He jumped out of the gym. There's theoretical juice out of his stance. He's physically strong, but there's no power element to his game as a rusher, as a senior coming out. Just wasn't there. He's got some good technique. I like his cross chop. I think he's got some bend around the edge. He has an inside move. He could become a good player. I do think that. I think end of the second round, third round, where you typically see Josh Sweat and Daniil Hunter go as raw, toolsy edge rushers. Nick Bonito, Drake Jackson, second, third round. Sure, take your chance on Boye Mafe's athletic tools. First round for Boye Mafe, it does not add up to me. So Boye Mafe is a not my guy. It might be the first Gopher that I've ever had on a not my guys list. And then Cameron Thomas is on this list as well for like a complete flip side of these arguments. He kind of goes too far in the other direction where he is not an NFL athlete. He can't get off the ball with juice. He has no threat of speed or bend around the edge. I think with shorter arms, which he has, he does not have a power element to his game. Now, he has a really high motor. He's constantly working to the quarterback. He has quick feet. He has very quick feet, and it helps him in the run game. But he's another player that's in kind of this second, third round range. I have a hard time seeing him consistently winning with the tools that he has at his disposal, because I don't know how he's going to win at the next level. I don't think just constantly kind of going like this and moving your feet forward is going to translate to the NFL like it did at his level of competition against the tackles he was going with that just didn't know how to handle his arm strength and his quickness. But he doesn't have the ability to win in traditional ways. Cameron Thomas, to me, is edge 19 with a 5th to a 6th round grade. And I just don't see the upside for him at all. I think, he could potentially be a rotational guy that defends the run well and can kind of provide some motor and energy to maybe get after the quarterback or contain on play action and stuff. But yeah, I don't think he's an NFL athlete. So it's almost like the complete opposite of these high upside guys we talked about. And then my last edge on this list is Kinglsey Anagbare out of South Carolina. And, he graded really well per PFF. He had a bunch of pressures. I have never been more underwhelmed by someone that's supposed to be a second or a third round pick. And it started at the Senior Bowl. I didn't get it then. He's a terrible athlete, man. He has no get off. The power's not really there, even though he's got 35-inch arms plus. He's similar to Cameron Thomas. Like he's an arm fighter. He kind of keeps working to the quarterback. But what does he do that's going to win one-on-ones at the next level? Because it's not speed. It's not converting speed to power. It's not quickness with inside moves. It's not bend. He's got none of those ways that NFL edge rushers need to win at the next level. And if you're taking a guy in the second, third round, unless he's super high floor, like say Chauncey Golston last year out of Iowa, or AJ Epinesa maybe was in a similar conversation, but a guy that can play it up, be that day one impact as a third edge, and you feel damn good that he's going to do that and defend the run at a high level. Maybe Josh Pascal is that guy this year, but unless he's that, I don't know why you take Kinglsey Anagbare in the second, third round, who just, to me, doesn't have the tools. I get that he's big and lengthy and was productive in the SEC. He was the most underwhelming watch in this entire class. I have a 6th to a 7th round grade on Kinglsey and Anagbare. I just don't see it. Then we get to linebacker and Nakobe Dean. Really not a surprise here at the top of my list for these linebackers. I think he's incredibly overrated because he played on a championship defense behind one of the best defensive lines in the league that we've ever seen. He had clean rush lanes to really do what he does best, which is, have clean run and chase ability as a tackler. I mean, he was basically covering kicks as a linebacker for them. Just get in space, run, tackle, see ball, hit ball. That's what he is. And his speed is overrated. He didn't run his 40 time. A scout came out this week and said he's a 4.69 guy. Does not surprise me. He does not defend the run well. He can, manipulate his body and elude blocks and stuff, but NFL linemen are going to get their hands on him, and SEC linemen did, and they're going to lock this guy up. He does not have the length or the strength or the size to get off blocks. He's very inexperienced as a coverage defender because he was a part of this rotation, right? Where, sometimes it was Tyndall, sometimes it was Walker. Most of the times on third down, Nakobe Dean was blitzing, something he's very good at because he comes in with a lot of energy. He's low. He's a tough guy to block on a blitz. He's got a lot of value there for sure. But, man, for a long time, it's been first round for Nakobe Dean. And I said this months ago. I was like, there is no way that's a first round prospect. He's Jayon Brown. He's a weak side linebacker. And frankly, far from the most athletic linebacker in this class. There's a lot of guys. I mean, even like Malcolm Rodriguez down the board might be a better version of Nakobe Dean that no one's talking about. I haven't quite gone that far in my rankings, but give me Malcolm Rodriguez over Nakobe Dean. Like, give me Rodriguez in the 4th over Nakobe Dean in the top 40 picks. With the track record of linebackers whiffing in the draft lately, he could easily prove me wrong. I get that his highlight reel is awesome because he had a lot of opportunities to make those plays at Georgia with the talent he had around him. I know he's a good kid, and hopefully the game, continues to learn all the things about playing the position that he's going to need to at the next level. But he's a total not my guy. He's my 4th linebacker in this year's class, and to me, a late 2nd, early 3rd round pick consideration. Then Christian Harris as well makes my list. Extremely underwhelming watch. I talked about him in my linebackers video. I thought, okay, Alabama linebacker, coached up from Nick Saban with 4.4 speed. Like, this guy's going to be electric. I can't wait to make this a my guy and just start raving about Christian Harris. My jaw dropped at how bad he was. Just super delayed at recognizing the run, missed a ton of tackles, dodged contact in the run game. A non-factor on early downs. Good man defender. The kind of ability to flip his hips and change directions, the long speed, it's there. There's tools to work with. But yikes, man. I don't know if you can be so passive and play linebacker at the next level. Someone floated out the idea of him dropping a little bit of weight and playing safety. I actually don't hate that idea because he's fast enough to do it. But God, I could not believe that this was a Nick Saban linebacker. And then lastly, Quay Walker also makes this list. I had to throw him on as a late ad because I'm starting to see him in the first round as a top 40 player. These Georgia players, I don't know why I keep having them, I'm lower on them, but I think it's my example is, how the New England Patriots, which the reason I bring them up is because their system actually is very similar to what Georgia did last year, kind of a 3-3, 3-4 hybrid type, where everyone's kind of got a very distinct role on that defense, and they were fine-tuned in the right direction. But as an NFL prospect, a lot of these guys just didn't show a lot of versatility, and they all benefited greatly from everyone having such a great role. And for the Patriots, we've seen Jamie Collins leave, Kyle Van Noy leave, the list goes on and on. Malcolm Butler leave, like whoever it may be. We've seen a ton of players leave the Patriots, struggle elsewhere, come back to New England, and play really well. That's a comparison for a lot of these Georgia defenders. But with Quay Walker, I think he's a good player. I think he's a good Mike linebacker. He can defend the run. He's smart. He's athletic. But to me, he's a second, frankly, a third to a 4th round player. I think he fits all of your checks. but I didn't think he was a dominant run defender. I think he's inexperienced in coverage, and he's a good gamble to make in the, third, fourth round. But top 50 for him, I don't think the tape is there for him. If you really buy into his physical traits, maybe, but both Georgia linebackers make this list. The one guy I would gamble on is Tyndall, because he's a better athlete than both of them, and we just don't know a whole lot about him. I think Tyndall in like the fourth, fifth round is more exciting to me than spending a top 50 pick on either of the other guys. Then at cornerback, Tariq Woolen out of UTSA, and he's Kevin King. He's one of the stiffer corners you'll see. He's a converted receiver prospect, so he's going to, take some more time to get used to that technique, but, I think you're overreacting to height and long speed. The cornerback position is about much, much more than that. He's going to have to learn how to play physical and press guys and get in their face and match his feet that are really slow. He's got long speed, but his footwork is slow. So in press, guys are going to get off of him very quickly, even if he's really long. And then, the second a receiver breaks, he loses him. He doesn't have that route anticipation to really stay tight. And his short area quickness and change of direction and acceleration, it's just not there. I don't know what he is going to be able to do at the next level that will be effective, barring an incredible growth. And this is someone often mocked in the second or third round, and he very well may go there because he ran in the 4.2s. But I can't justify that. He's cornerback 20 for me. He's a total project and a 5th to a 7th round grade. I think he's a gamble to make late in the draft. Put him with a good D-backs coach and see what happens. But yikes, man, that is way too early for me to draft Kevin King. Cam Taylor Britt also makes this list. I'm not adamant about this one. I've just seen a lot of late hype for him. I do think he's a 4th round prospect. He's the kind of guy that has the tools, the speed, the quickness, the type of stuff that you want to gamble on around that 4th, 5th round range, and we've seen that work out before. But if you're talking about him as a 2nd rounder and someone that you're hoping to give you starting playing time right away, that's where it gets a little rich for me. I'm not going to die on that hill. I could see him being a good player and a good pick, but he is a player that I was a little bit underwhelmed by his kind of technique and route anticipation. He just left a lot of space between him and the receivers he was covering, which a lot of that is just kind of awareness at the position, and route anticipation is something we talk about a lot. Like, if you're playing off coverage, you can kind of, pick up on stuff to know, okay, this is an out route, it's coming, I got to get started now, and just really squeeze that route and shorten the distance between me and the receiver. I didn't think he did that all that well. All right, got 2 more players here at safety. Kyle Hamilton is going to make my list. I don't think Kyle Hamilton's a top 10 player in this class. I think he's incredibly scheme dependent for a player that we spent a lot of time talking about how versatile he is and how he can do all these different things because he's so tall and he doesn't look like most safeties. I think that's actually very inaccurate. I think Kyle Hamilton actually is one of the most scheme dependent safeties in this entire draft. I think he needs to play a star nickel linebacker box safety role. And he can go too high. He can absolutely play cover 2, split safety stuff. You can do some stuff with him, but him as a single high free safety in cover 1, like cover 1 is where I'm really worried about him. A lot of times, either your safety's playing that free safety role, or you're going to have to ask him to cover slot receivers a lot of times, if you're in base especially. So, he can't cover slot receivers as a safety. I do not believe he can. He can cover tight ends, absolutely, but to me, he needs to be around the line of scrimmage as an overhang, weak side linebacker, strong safety type, where he can just kind of use his range and his ability to read the quarterback's eyes and his short area acceleration to his best advantage. I do worry about a team taking him and making him a second safety for your defense. I think you need a more specific, fine-tuned role. Now, he can be out there for all 3 downs. He can be a weak side linebacker in base. He can be a box safety in nickel and dime packages. But again, if you're taking him and asking to put him as your just true number 2 safety, which it seems like that's what teams are going to do, I'm worried about how he's going to fit in that role. Very similar to how we've seen Jamal Adams lately struggle in the modern passing game for Seattle. How we've seen, frankly, Isaiah Simmons has had a hard time finding a home, and Simmons is a lot faster. Landon Collins on Washington, he couldn't hold up as a deep safety. Like, you have to be, in the modern league, you got to be a really good cover player against receivers to be a number 2 safety, and I don't think that's Kyle Hamilton. So I do think you can spend a first-round pick on him, but similar to like Drake London, honestly, like he needs a very specific landing spot to be worth a first-round pick. Then I have Lewis Cine, and kind of like Cam Taylor Britt, I don't know how confident I am in this. I just seen him at like 22, 23, like I've seen him very high in mock drafts lately, and part of this is my love for Daxton Hill. I can't possibly kind of get behind putting him above Daxton Hill is a big part of this. But I also think, similar to what we said about some of these Georgia players, he had his role. He had clean run lanes, just run, chase, be a good tackler, and used as a free safety. It was stay deeper than the deepest. You don't have to take a lot of risks. Our pass rush will take care of that. Just don't give up big plays over the top. He can do that, but someone that gave, he wasn't a good cover player at Georgia. I'll just say that. It started to come on as the season went on. You could see some of those flashes, but when it comes to reading the quarterback's eyes, assessing route combinations heading his way, taking risks, jumping routes from zone coverage, I didn't see any of that. That's going to have to be coached into him. And I think he's a little bit tighter in man coverage. And his makeup speed really helps him if he's covering like deep crossing routes or trying to catch up on a deep post or something like that. But you'll see, like, he gives up some separation early on at the route break because he's not anticipating, and he's a little bit tighter in his change of direction, in his ability to transition and all that stuff. So good player for sure. Definitely a second round talent, a lot of upside with the right coaching, but I do think top 25, like even first round, if Daxton Hill is there, I think it's a little bit rich, but there's upside there. He could definitely pay out as well. That was it. That was a really fun video, just trashing dudes for 45 minutes. No, I hope everybody on this list proves me wrong and makes me look like an idiot. It's just my honest assessments, balancing my evaluations with kind of consensus opinions, just so, just putting it out there. And I think it's a useful exercise. I really hope you guys enjoyed. And I got one more, technically 2 draft videos coming your way. We're going to be doing a predictive mock tomorrow. I'm not a big predictive mock fan, but we're going to do one. And then on Thursday, I'm going to do just like a slideshow deal of my final top 10 rankings, because there's been some movement with some of those earlier videos with like receivers and stuff. So yeah, that's what you can look forward to. And then of course the draft, the live stream on Thursday. So pumped, man. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you soon. Peace.